how much overlap did the end of your career, or even any part of your career, have with the Russian guys coming over to AKA? How much time was there?
Oh, 10 years?
Oh shit! So a long
Yeah.
time then.
I mean,
Okay,
it was, yeah. I mean, Habib came in like 20, I want to say right when almost when the UFC merged with Strikeforce. So 2010, 2012, somewhere. I think 2012, 2013 is when he came, and then Islam came shortly after, and then Umar came shortly after, and Abu Bakr was there. And like they had a good little small group. Islam Mamedov was there. Mamedov, Islam, Makhachev, and Habib were my three training partners. They
really?
when they, that my fight leading into to the Nate fight, I used Habib, I used Mamedov, Islam Mamedov for some of that training, and yeah, man, like, and
And
then
that
I
was your
use them
head.
all the
You
time.
head kick KO'd him for that one, if I recall correctly, right?
Yeah, the Nate fight, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did,
so let me ask you, like, 'cause this is something people ask me all the time, and I feel like people sleep on this. If you count yourself, Strikeforce champion,
Mhm.
right? Luke Rockhold, Strikeforce champion, UFC champion. DC, I guess he had the Strikeforce Grand Prix title, but then
Yeah.
obviously two-weight world champion in UFC. Um, there's Frank Shamrock before that. There is
Mhm.
Javier himself. And then there are all the Russian guys as well. It's like AKA's claim to being, at a bare minimum, the most decorated gym in MMA history. Now, I know ATT's up there. There's some other great gyms, but AKA stands kind of alone. I mean, the fact that Fitch and Koscheck were there and didn't get titles, and look how
Yeah.
fucking good they were, kind of speaks to like just how much insane talent has run through that gym. When people ask you, I mean, I'm obviously you're biased, but I would just love to hear your perspective about how you answer that question about whether AKA is the best gym in MMA history.
Honestly, it's so hard for me to say yes, it is, but I'm gonna say yes because I am biased. But it just comes down to, you gotta remember, like, Militich had the whole crew. Like, basically every title was held up by Militich's camp for a while, right? They had Tim Sylvia, they had Pat Militich, and then Matt Hughes took his spot. Who else was around? There was other guys they just filled in
Jens
so many.
Pulver.
Jens Pulver. I mean, like, they had a great group of guys as well. So, and they were the first ones to do it, which maybe was easier to do it back then. I don't know. But bottom line is they had a great group. And then Greg Jackson, he had a slew of guys, right? To the point where they had to fight each other. And there was, I think for me, the reason why I say we were the best gym was because even to this day, our guys decided not to fight each other. That was one. And two is they didn't care what the UFC said. They said, no, we're not fighting each other. If it comes, it comes. But like, we're not gonna let it get to that. And Koscheck and Fitch had to stand on business. And it almost cost Fitch his career because they didn't like Fitch, they liked Koss. And so it almost cost him his career. Were doing anything they could to get John Fitch out of there. And so Cain Velasquez in DC. DC had to go to 205 because there was already talk like, hey man, we can't keep having you beat all of our number one contenders. Cain is at the top. And DC's like, I'm not fighting Cain. Smart call, very smart. But it was one of those positions where we had guys that were in the same weight class. I was training with Gray Maynard, Tyson Griffin, Khabib, Islam Mamedov, all at the same time. They were all in my gym at the same time when I fought Nate Diaz. And I had Leo Vieira, jiu-jitsu master.
Legend. Yeah.
Yeah, legend. Lucas Leitch was coming in to train. Lapella was coming in to train. Marcus Buchecha was coming in to train. We had just a great camp at that moment. That was the best we were ever going to be. Really was. Like,
It's
Luke
really
it was awesome.
it's just a remarkable amount of Hall of Famers and elite guys who went through there. So how do you answer the question of, like, it's something I've wondered too. Now, different sport, different nationality, different culture, but just let me introduce it and see what you think of it. In kickboxing, teammates will fight each other, right? Especially the Dutch guys. The
Yeah.
Dutch guys just kind of let it rock. And I don't know what that does to team chemistry. I don't know what that does to gym politics. I obviously have no clue, right? So how do you feel about like what you guys did as a successful formula versus like somehow the Dutch guys
Mhm.
seem to just get around it? I'm not sure how you would describe it.
So it would be hard for me to describe how the Dutch is because I don't know like what their culture is inside a gym, not to mention just their culture in their country. Like, is it okay just to fight your friend? I mean, here To me, it's always been about loyalty. I'm very loyal to my friends. You know, Habib was very upset with me. I'll give you this little caveat here: is Habib was upset with me when I had Conor McGregor on our show, and he didn't talk to me for a while. And I had to reach out to him like, "Hey, you haven't returned my call." We ran into. He's like, "Brother," he's like, "it really upset me that you had him on." And I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't know this. I didn't. He never talked to me about it until I had to approach him." So loyalty is a huge thing, and I've always been a very loyal person. I didn't think he'd be offended by it because I was like, "You beat his face in. Like, what is there to talk about? Like, like you destroyed him. Like, so I didn't think he'd be mad, but he was. He was upset. And as I look back, I'm like, I understand now. He said all these things about your father. He said all these things about you and your religion and your culture and your family and your wife and everything." And then I wrapped my head around that. I was like, all right, cool. I understand exactly where you're coming from now. And our gym has been very connected. Like we just choose not to want to fight each other. In terms of Dutch culture, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's okay. You know, I couldn't speak on that.
Yeah.
I know that other gyms, guys like at American Top Team, right? Like Robbie Lawler and T Wood fought. Like Robbie left the gym after he lost because they took his thing down, apparently. His picture of him up and put Woodley's up. And I think that bothered him. And he left. He ended up going to Killcliff. He's there now. He's been there ever since. Killcliff is dealing with that on a daily basis, is because they're all managed by different people. They have one coach, and the coach is like, look, I'll train you guys. I'll have separate times for you guys to hit pads and hit mitts. And they have a couple coaches that work individually with some guys, and it's working for them. But there has been some animosity between fighters, like, you know, the Kamaru Usman and Ian Gary situation. Ian left. You know, Shavkat is there now too with Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman's in and out, kind of with Trevor Whitman in Colorado, but he's also coming into Killcliff, you know, occasionally, and he's there quite a bit. I think on his off training camps, he's there. But they have to navigate through that. That's not something AK ever wanted. Like, let me give you an example. We had John Fitch, Josh Koscheck, Mike Swick, all at 170. I was in the process of, you know, Anthony Johnson had asked me to manage him, and I was like, I can't manage you. I've got too much on my mind, you know, on my own camp. But he came into AKA. He wanted to train at AKA, and I said, look, we have to. I got him in the UFC. I'm the reason why Anthony Johnson ever got in the UFC, and he'll tell you. He said it on this podcast. But he literally it came to a point where they're like, no, we have too many 170 pounders. We can't. And sadly, I wish he would have stayed because he ended up being a 205 pounder, you know, eventually. But we had to turn fighters like him away because they're like, no, the UFC's already given us a hard time about Fitch won't fight Swick and Swick won't fight Koss, and nobody wants to fight each other. And they're like, no, we can't do this. So it did there was some things. They asked me to fight Gray Maynard, and I said no. And, you know, Gray, and then Habib was asked with Ariel Helwani, and we were doing an interview after I cornered him for one of his fights against Pat Healy. So would you fight Josh? He's like, nah, brother, I wouldn't fight him. You know? And I'm like, okay, that answered the question. And to be honest, those hypotheticals in the beginning, you know, all it does is stir the pot. Because let me just tell you how it all broke down. Gray Maynard was ranked 1 ahead of me. He was 2. I was 3. Habib was I think just barely got into the rankings after he beat Pat Healy. I think he was like number 11 or 12 or 10 or something like that. Bottom line is, I lost. Gray lost. Habib runs on and becomes champion. So what's the point of asking all those questions? I know that the media needs to get some controversy going and they want to ask them, but in reality, so many things need to fall into place for us to have to fight each other. It just so happened that like Koscheck and Fitch were there at the top at the same time and beating everybody at the same time and making it look easy, to be honest. So
Yeah.
In our gym, we never really even considered fighting each other. I was of the notion though that my own personal is if I ever did become UFC champion, any of my teammates, if they were next in line, I would fight them. And the reason why I would fight them is because that's life-changing money. And I'm not there to take away my friends' money. That's how they feed their kids. Why would I have you fight for less money, knowing that you could beat me if you could beat me? A fight is a fight. Like, I've got to be able to beat the best guys. You're the best guy. You're my teammate. I would rather lose it to you knowing you're taking care of your family. That's how I always looked at it. But guys like Khabib are like, no, I'm not fighting my friend. I'm not going to do that. And I respect that and appreciate that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, again, these are things that I couldn't comment on in any kind of way intelligently, except to say, if you're wondering why the media asks, like, even when they know the answer, there's 2 reasons for that. One is that in MMA, what I have found over time is that if you just keep asking, eventually you are going to get a different answer, you know, and it may take years.
Yeah.
It literally might take years, but eventually, like, oh, if I finally happens. And then 2 is that you like, for example, let's say there's an interview with I don't know, make something up, Ilya Taporia, right? Just something, and you ask him something and you get a no for it. If MMA Junkie asked it, it doesn't matter because now it's your turn to ask, and your editor is going to be like, I don't care that they asked. You need to ask on the record for this interview for this time, so we can get an answer for it because this might be the time that the answer is different. So like these competitive kind of weird information pressures that, you know, by the time it makes to the fighter's doorstep, they get sick of it, you know.
That sounds like my wife. She'll ask me the same question 15 different ways, so she gets the answer she wants.
Yeah.
So, but I understand, like, when you finally get the answer you want, we're the company that got it. Like, we're the media source that was able to pull that. Then everyone's got to pull from your question. So I understand that. I do understand that.